Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Inside China Basin webcast podcast. Great to have you with us again on Facebook Live and, of course, on the podcast on the sportsvirus.com. And we've got really good news. We're going to be on the Believe Podcast Network starting really soon. So look for our Giants podcast there. Today, we have a very special guest. Giants fans are very familiar with him, and we were sad to see him go. He was on NBC Sports Bay Area as one of the anchors in the pregame and postgame shows for the Giants, and now he's with NBC Sports. It's Ahmed Fareed. Really looking forward to talking to him in just a second, but first want to tell you about my favorite golf course once again. TPC Harding Park is now open. They just opened up, and they are accepting tee times. So that's really good news. www.tpc.com/Harding Park. And they are still planning to have the PGA Championship August 3rd through the 9th at TPC Harding Park. And our other sponsors, Sun First Solar, should be your first choice when it comes to solar, competitive pricing, expert consultation, and the best warranty. Go local and get your Sun Power solar system from Sun First Solar today. Call them at 415-458-5870. Now let's welcome in from the East Coast, Ahmed Fareed. We missed you, Ahmed. It was so much fun getting to know you a little bit when you were here in the Bay Area. I want to talk about backgrounds in a second because we see, and man, that's a great shot you got right there. That you got Barry Sanders jersey. I mean, you've really thought this out, right?
Most of it is my wife. She headed up this whole operation. But yeah, I've been tasked at NBC Sports with looking at other people's backgrounds. And so what's that saying about living in glass houses? Yeah, there it is right there. They said, Ahmed, why don't you go and look at people's backgrounds and judge them and put them in a contest against each other? So there's Mike Florio and Patrick Sharp. And I said, okay, but if I do that, I have to make sure my background does not look terrible or else I'm just setting myself up. And so thanks to my wife, yes, I've had like 50 some days to get it looking like this. And we're at a good point right now, Joe.
I think by doing that, now you've made everybody so conscious of it. I mean, I'm looking back here going, oh, wait a minute, is mine okay? I mean, do I have the right things in place? Because, you know, it's almost like there's a contest, and there's a judge and everything for this.
Yours is very interesting, Joe, and there's a lot going on there. And so there's a lot. That's good. That's what you want, because as I was telling you before we came on here, you know, if the stuff coming out of my mouth is not interesting, at least maybe you can find something entertaining with what's behind one of my shoulders there.
We got the jersey. It looks like you got some basketballs in the background there. You know, it's kind of blurred out. I think you've learned that you don't want others criticizing like what you have there. So it's a little blurred out. It kind of looks like the, you know, when you watch a video and they don't want you to know who's in that video because of, you know, it could be a lawsuit, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's almost it's bordering on, and I've done this a couple of times where I was doing something with the Breeders' Cup horse racing last week. And when I got on camera with them, they go, what is that background even real? It's almost gotten to the point, Joe, where it's almost like too different, where it just is too distracting now. And people are like, are you in front of a green screen? So I might have to tone it down just a bit.
All right, Ahmed, let's talk about what life's been like for you. I mean, not only during the pandemic, but even, you know, over the course of the last year or so here since you left NBC Sports Bay Area and you went to the network. I know you still keep tabs on the Giants. You're still very much involved and interested in it. But what kind of a change was it for you?
It was a big change, and I've been out here in Connecticut now for about a year. It was huge, and I mean, baseball is my first love, my favorite sport, still is to this day. Really fell in love covering that Giants team and getting to know all the people and the players there, and doing a jig with Andres Torres and Tim Flannery back in the day. Working with Dave Feldman too. I mean, like honestly, it was. I could see myself of staying there the rest of my career. I liked it there that much, and getting to know all the people. There's coaching core, which we still were lucky enough to be able to do this past year. But you know, it's like the big network comes calling, and you may have to make the decision of, you know, you only live once. You want to see what that would be like, and getting to cover the Olympics every 2 years or right around there. So we thought coming up this summer, but yeah, it's been different. It's been a lot of learning. I said I'd never go back to college, but it feels like I have, and learning about rugby and horse racing and swimming and all the different sports that we have, Premier League as well. But it's been challenging, but it's been rewarding as well. But I'll be honest with you, Joe, I really miss it. I had such a good time out in San Francisco and so many positive experiences that I often think back, and I would have been super happy to stay there the rest of my career.
You guys had a lot of fun. I mean, you and Dave Feldman, you had great chemistry. And I want to talk later about baseball chemistry because we had Joan Ryan on, who wrote a book called Intangibles, and we'll get to that. But first, one of the things that really was cool was something that wasn't on air. It was the commercials that you guys did, the Carpool Confessions, and you did a bunch of them. I mean, I saw the Steph Curry ones were off the charts, great. But I really took to the Hunter Pence commercial that you did. Of course, Javier Lopez, he was great as well. But Brandon Crawford, there's probably a bunch of them that I'll miss. But the one with the signs that you did with Hunter Pence, that really cracked me up. What about you? What were some of the ones that you really enjoyed?
It's so funny, that commercial you're showing right there with Hunter Pence. We'll be showing that tomorrow on Lunch Talk Live. It's a new show that comes on at noon. Mike Tirico normally hosts that show. Tomorrow, I'm going to get the chance to host it for the first time. We have Hunter Pence on the show tomorrow. We're going to show that commercial before we talk to him. And so it's actually irrelevant to what we're doing right now. There's not anything that I've done in my career that I think has been as well received as those commercials. They almost did the job too well, Joe, because I would have to go up to people and say, we do have a show. Have you seen the show that commercial's promoting? And people go, no, but we love the commercials. But it was right up my alley as far as a sense of humor, right up Dave's alley. And the thing that we both liked the most about it was that it wasn't like a hard sell, like, hey, watch our show. It was more of a, hey, here's two people. This is what our show is normally like. We're kind of goofy. We have a fun time. The players have bought into it. And if you happen to see the show on when you get done watching a Warriors game and Steph Curry or watching the Giants, maybe you'll stick with it a little bit longer. So those were really fun, really successful. A lot of really smart people at Comcast and NBC Sports Bay Area put those together. And so I don't know that I'll ever do anything in my career that's that well received as those commercials were.
It's different too. I mean, you're talking about acting all of a sudden, not only for you and for Dave Feldman, but for these players. And, they're used to being on camera and doing a lot of interviews, but it is different when you're acting, and maybe you could do several different takes before you get it right. I mean, I thought Hunter Pence was great. I mean, you're saying, he eats pizza with a fork and all that stuff. And, he's going, no, just the way he acted. Did anybody surprise you with how good they were on the commercials?
I mean, Steph Curry, like, what can't that guy do? He was changing lines. He was super active in the process, because a lot of the athletes get in there and they go, what are the lines you want me to say? It's like, all right, I'll say those lines. But Steph was like rearranging the script and adding his own 2 cents in there. And so he was fun. Brandon Crawford did the same thing. And I think that was cool in a player like Brandon Crawford to see, normally reserved, but kind of get him out of his comfort zone and put him in a different light. And I think that's what those commercials did best. But yeah, I look back and I still talk to Dave. I talked to Dave last week, and he's like, let's try to bring him back somehow. We'll do like a Zoom call from the passenger seat in both of our cars, and we'll call in Steve Kerr. And I'm like, you know what? I got nothing else going on. We might as well try it. So who knows? Maybe we'll bring him back in the next couple of weeks here.
All right. So I mentioned the chemistry that you had with Dave, and still have a good friendship. And I always enjoyed when you were on with Tim Flannery. I mean, Flan's one of my favorite people. He was the manager in 1994 when I was in Rancho Cucamonga. He was a manager of our team, and we won the California League title. So it's always special thinking back on that year when I was doing play-by-play. And Flannery, I mean, he is quite a character. And together, you guys meshed really well. I thought you had those little disagreements about analytics versus maybe the team chemistry aspect of things. And I know that you believe in both, but tell us a little bit about what it was like to work with Flan.
Flan was great, and everyone had their expertise and the things they did really well. I thought Tim Flannery was the best analyst at breaking things down that happened on the field. And so if there's a play or there's a relay and you're trying to figure out why this person was there or where it went wrong, there was really no one better, and not many better out there in the entire baseball broadcasting world than Tim Flannery at doing that. And so it was almost a shame when you had the down years with the Giants, because you get done with the game 11-2 loss. There wasn't a whole lot of appetite for breaking down the 7 plays that the Giants blew in the game. And so it was kind of a bummer at that point, because he couldn't do it as much. But you're right. He was skeptical about the new age stuff. Not that I think that he was this way personally, but there are some people that feel like it invalidates what they did when they were growing up, and not as much as like an additive to what they did. But it was fun. We had our back and forth, and he really, Joe, he really would battle with Brian Kenny over at MLB Network. That was his main adversary, and so I think he would carry some of that over to me over in locally at the Bay Area side, and so he's super smart. I loved picking his brain, and still do to this day. Email him every once in a while.
Yeah, he had Flanalytics. I remember that. And, it does take some of us old school guys a little while to sort of embrace the stats. I mean, in some respects, teams seem to go a little overboard. And I like the mix of it. And that was something that I thought in reading Joan Ryan's book, and I'm sure you're going to read it, Intangibles, about team chemistry. That's what you find, that, there are the analytics and you want to follow that, but there is really something to team chemistry. She just dives into all different aspects of it, proving that, it does exist and it is important in baseball.
I can't wait to read it. And I think, it kind of seems like we live in this world where it's black and white. You're either on this side of the argument or on that side of the argument, and both sides have a hard time saying, like, actually, you have some good points and we have some good points. Why don't we just talk about those? Because to say that team chemistry doesn't matter, and for the analytics side to say that, is just so false. And it's just clear. Anyone who has been a part of a team at a company or on an actual sports team, you realize how much better it is to perform when you're feeling good and when you have a connection with your teammates, and how much more you try when your head coach is someone you like as opposed to someone that you don't like. And so it's just so obvious that team chemistry plays a role, and good team chemistry can help you as a team. I think where the analytics side ran into a stumbling block is that they couldn't quantify it, right? It was very hard to qualify. I'd say, okay, we know it makes a difference, but we don't know how much of a difference, so we won't really invest in it. And I think Jones' book attempts to show the actual amount of difference that a good team can make. And I think that's where you start to come together, when you can show scientific proof that, when you all get along, it is easier to build a cohesive winning unit. And I think Joan does a good job of that, or will, from what I've read of the reviews, has done a good job of that in the book.
From the Giants' perspective, I don't know that you can go from one end of the spectrum to the other, at least as far as the image is concerned, more so than the Giants have. I mean, they went from Brian Sabian, and and he used some analytics, and maybe that was a little bit underrated how much he did use analytics, as he was more known as being more the gut general manager. And the same thing with Bruce Bochy. Sure, he would use some analytics, but again, it's more of, the gut feeling, to now where you have Gabe Kapler, and we haven't seen him manage a game yet, unfortunately, because of the pandemic. But you've got this feeling that things have completely switched over to the other side with Farhan Zaidi running the show. What's your take on the way things are going with the Giants and going forward, if the right moves have been made so far?
Well, I'm always open to trying new things. I think that's vital in any organization, any team, especially a sports team out there. Is you always have to be willing to try something else, and willing to go back if it doesn't work. Say, okay, we tried this new thing. We thought it was going to work. It didn't. We're going to go back to what we were doing before. And I think Farhan Zaidi is able to do that. Everything you've heard about Farhan, he's able to do the analytics side and try to experiment, but also is got a good personality where he can connect and make sure that you're on board. And if you're not on board, that's a problem. And I think that's what a lot of these analytic teams are seeing, is that, okay, if we can do something that we know gives us a 3% better chance of winning than this other thing, but if it decreases team morale by 25%, then that's a net loss. And I think Farhan Zaidi, from what I understand, is really good at navigating those interpersonal relationships, which really, when you think about it, that's analytics too. That's trying to gain an edge. If you can figure out a way to gain an edge with how your team feels, and going back to what Jones' book is all about, that is as much part of the calculus as a starting pitcher and an opener. You know what I mean? It's just like, you've got to figure out ways that you can be better. And I think Farhan's got a big enough net where he thinks, okay, it could be analytics, it could be a little bit of both, it could be a gut feel. If this manager is feeling like this guy's got an edge today, that's going to make that guy feel pretty good. And sometimes you can't quantify how much that helps the team at the end, but it certainly does a little bit.
What do you think about the state of the Giants whenever they do start playing again? I mean, obviously, Madison Bumgarner is not around anymore. So, Johnny Cueto, Jeff Samardzija, they're going to lead the rotation. But you've got some players that are on the downslide of their careers, and they still have contracts, and it's kind of hard to improve the team when you're paying out those contracts. You're really not going after free agents, and the farm system was way down there. Now it's starting to improve. It's starting to get better ratings. I mean, do you see maybe the light at the end of the tunnel for the Giants?
Sure. And honestly, if they play a season this year that's 60 games or 50 games, who knows? I mean, I think they still have enough talent to where in a small sample size, you see it all the time where a team in the first couple months of the year, the last couple months of the year goes on a tear. Wouldn't happen over a 162 game season, but you can do it over 2 months. So I think it's a team that still has enough talent, some veteran talent. You got the Johnny Cueto's, Buster Posey, and see if he can bounce back to compete. But I mean, obviously they're in a transition period. Nice to see some of those young prospects coming up. And I think it is all, Joe, part of a 5-year plan for him. They won't say they have a 5-year plan, but I'm sure it was to take, shots at the dartboard with players like Yastrzemski and see who you can find, who might be part of your core in the next 5 years, take some chances on younger players and play out the contracts of the Brandon Belts and the Buster Posies and see what you got after 2 or 3 years and then really make your push. And I think they've done that so far.
I don't know if you've been watching any baseball from Korea. I really haven't checked it out yet. I think it's on live at 5:30 a.m. on ESPN. So I haven't really watched that. I don't know if I have the interest in that. But if baseball does resume, it looks like it'll have no fans in the stands, which really will be strange. And there was a report that came out just yesterday about how baseball could start up on July the 1st. It seems early to me still. But if it does happen and there are no fans in the stands, can you imagine that?
I can imagine it just because I did watch a little bit of the Korean baseball organization, and it's strange. I know. And I think I tweeted it out a couple weeks ago that don't undersell that. I think you make a good point. The way the game will feel, because everyone's got this thirst we all want to get back to normal. It's like having sports on TV would be getting back to normal, but it would still be very abnormal in the way it's presented, especially, Joe, if you're playing in your spring training stadiums, because such a big part of baseball is the crowd, those 30,000, 40,000 fans in the stand and the stadiums. I mean, playing those games in those iconic stadiums all across America, Fenway Park, AT&T Park, Oracle Park as well. It's like that is baseball. And so without that, will it feel like the same thing? Will it feel, nothing's going to feel normal about this year if they play games. But will it feel normal enough for you to tune in every night? And I hope it does. I want to be optimistic about that, but you're right. You're losing a lot without that atmosphere in the stadium, and you're certainly losing a ton if you're just playing the games at Scottsdale Stadium. As nice as Scottsdale Stadium is, it's not like Oracle Park.
Yeah, I mean, baseball, it's really hard to go through a summer and think about no baseball. And I know how much you love the sport. When you got the job at MLB Network, did you have to pinch yourself a little bit that you were going to be talking about baseball every night? You were doing quick pitch, you're doing the highlights. And of course, that led to you coming here to the Bay Area and being on the Giants pregame and postgame. But just those early days when you first went on the air at MLB Network, I'm sure you were pretty excited.
Yeah, and it's so funny because you go in comfortable knowing like I'm a baseball fan. I feel really good about my knowledge base about the sport. And they go, okay, make sure you have that knowledge base about every single team and about all the top prospects and about the history of every team. And then you go, oh crap, I got to do some studying once again. So there was a little bit of that feeling when I first got to MLB Network in 2011. I was there for 2 years, 2011 and 2012. But I'll never forget the guy that hired me, John Entz, was talking to me before I started. And he was like, I want to sit you down. I want to know, do you really like baseball? And I was like, yeah, it's my favorite sport. And he's like, I don't ask you that because it's like you're disqualified if you don't love baseball. He's like, but you have to like it or else you will get sick of it very quickly, which is true. I mean, it was difficult. You get to August and even the former players who'd been in it for years, it's a grind to get through it. And so as much as we all were baseball nuts and loved it, it tested you, talking about one thing every day for the entire year. But we all did. We all loved it and especially got pumped around the playoff time. So it was a great place to work.
So if a Giants Dodgers game goes 16 innings and lasts 4.5 hours, you were waiting there, right, for that to end before you could
Yes.
actually record quick pitch, right?
Yes. So yeah, I did the quick pitch show mostly for the 2 years that I was there. And so most nights we would go on at 1 a.m. We would do the show live from 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. And whatever game wasn't done, then we would tape from 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. We just re-air as much of the show as we could, but just cut in and tape the other live stuff as it finished. And yeah, absolutely right. If there was a game that and there was I forget what it was. There was a Dodgers game. There was one in San Diego too. It like never rains in San Diego, but we had a long rain delay there, and I think we didn't get out till five in the morning. One of those nights. And the worst part is that the show re-airs, and so it's like you stand down, and if the game's still going at 3:35 when that highlight is coming up in the show once again, everyone stand by, get ready. We're on live TV once again. And so that did test you driving home with the sun coming up, but we loved baseball, and you had to do that job.
Yeah, people don't realize how hard it is to be sharp at 3 o'clock in the morning. Ahmed, I was doing play-by-play for NBC actually on the Beijing Olympics, and we were doing it from the studio. I was part of that group that was calling events off monitors, and we did archery at 3 a.m. I remember I was like, man, I better really get pumped up. It's 3 a.m. Eastern time. I better be alive and ready to go for archery, And
Yeah.
it's not easy sometimes because your body clock is just not ready for that.
Yeah, and it definitely got easier the more I would do it. The problem was on the weekends when I wasn't working, I was still on that clock, right? And I'm getting up at noon, I'm going to bed at 3:30 at night, and so it's like the sacrifices that you make, and people say, oh, it's like I always make the joke that I can never complain about my job because my friends don't want to hear. They're like, you talk about sports all day, every day, but that was a difficult time. I mean, I had just met my wife, and we had just gotten married the last year that I was at MLB Network. I was off Mondays and Tuesdays. She was off on the weekend, of course, like every normal person out there. And we didn't see a whole bunch of each other. I was working the late night shift, and she was working a normal 9 to 5. And so it was difficult. We rarely had one day off together. And when we did, I was sleeping most of the day, which was unfortunate.
I looked into your background. I didn't realize that you were a high school quarterback in Michigan. So was your dream to be an NFL quarterback when you were a kid?
Well, I could throw the ball about 35, 40 yards, so it was never in the cards for me to get to even Division III probably football. But yeah, I played quarterback in high school back in Michigan. My dad actually was my varsity coach the 2 years that I played varsity football, and I mean I knew I wasn't going to be able to do that professionally, but I was like, if I like sports, I got to figure out a way to stay in it. And I'm really happy that my parents were positive about it, because I think there's a lot of parents out there that say, let's do something serious. It's like, yeah, you can talk about sports, but that's not realistic. Let's do something that really could be a career for you moving forward. But I said, yeah, I think I can do this, and they supported me. And it was tough to break in with 100 resume tapes out there, but I knew it was going to be easier than trying to be an NFL quarterback, and so I just stuck with it.
I think everybody has, one or two baseball players that are their favorites. And growing up in Michigan, I would have guessed that yours have to be Tigers, right?
Yes, they are. Growing up, my favorite player was Lou Whitaker. I've got my Barry Sanders jersey here, but I have right over there, I have my Lou Whitaker #1 jersey. Him and Alan Trammell were my two favorites. Kirk Gibson, you can throw him in there as well. Yeah, a lot of Tigers on those teams in the late 80s, early 90s is right up my alley.
But just about everybody loved Willie Mays, and it's his
Yeah.
birthday today as we speak, 89th birthday, which is, he's just such an icon. So great that he's still around at Oracle Park. And I'm sure you probably, went past him a few times when you went to the ballpark, right?
100%. Always too intimidated to really have a prolonged conversation with him, but it was amazing. Every spring training I'd go to Scottsdale, and that was honestly one of my favorite things that I would cover in the Bay Area was spring training with the Giants there at Scottsdale. But he was there, and he was there at the table, and he would be there throughout the season. And players, a lot of times, it was funny. Players felt the same way I did. A lot of players were intimidated or didn't want to bother him and go up to him. And it took for one of those teams, Jake Peavy, to stop in the clubhouse and say, guys, this is an invaluable resource we have just sitting at this table talking to nobody. Go talk to Willie Mays, learn something, hear some stories about what it was like back in the day. So he really encouraged a lot of those Giants on the teams that he was with to talk to Willie, because he is there and he's a baseball nut and he wants to share that knowledge. And he also wants to tell some jokes out there too, which he's really good at.
Happy birthday to Willie. All right, to finish up, Ahmed, you came here really during the heyday of the Giants. I mean, they win a World Series in 2010. You come here, they win in 2012. They win in 2014. I mean, the fans really started to get a little spoiled, I think. And now it's kind of like normal. I mean, a team that's trying to pursue getting back to that level. What did you notice from Bay Area fans? Because, for me, it was so different because growing up watching the Giants, they didn't have that many great teams. There were a few times where they had a shot and you really had to cherish those. It wasn't like they were going to be in the World Series every other year.
Yeah, I was there for 6 years. And so I don't have my finger totally on the pulse of what motivates and how the Bay Area fan is feeling. But from my perspective, coming from, MLB Network on the East Coast, I grew up in Michigan, in the Midwest. Bay Area sports fans always struck me as really appreciative of winning. And of course, it was because the Giants hadn't done a whole lot of it in the past. But there was just this joy with the team, and there was a lack of negativity. So even when the teams were bad, it was more apathy than negativity. And it was the sports fan vibe that I really enjoyed. It's basically right up my alley. And so I noticed that, there was so much joy with a team that had struggled to get to the top of the sport and then does it three years and in 5. But what was interesting to me, Joe, is that you see it firsthand too with like the Warriors run, right? It's like you need these ebbs and flows. You need winning and losing to make it all feel good, because I'm not going to say that we got spoiled super fast on the Warriors, but I think by the end of it, when they won championships and when it was inevitable, it didn't feel the same as that first championship. I think it was a little different for the Giants because they were able to go every other year. And so you saw the agony of defeat and then another year of winning, and especially how they finished off their last one with Bumgarner in 2014. But I think, Joe, you need these down years because that builds the diehards, that builds the character of the fan. As much as we think we would like winning every single season, I think it's better this way, to see the struggles and then try to get back to the top of the mountain.
Yeah, I guess it would be like eting ice cream every night. I mean, I don't know. Maybe everybody's doing that with shelter in place right
now. Yeah, I feel like that's what I'm doing.
Well, hopefully you can get back to your normal life, just like everybody. We're all hoping to get out of our home studio at some point. But Ahmed, thanks a lot for the time. Really appreciate it, and hope to cross paths with you soon.
Joe, continued success, and we'll talk to you down the road.
All right, that's Ahmed Fareed from NBC Sports, formerly from NBC Sports Bay Area. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody, and check out our podcast on thesportsvirus.com. And as I said earlier, we're going to be on the Believe Podcast Network, so look for that as well. For now, I'm Joe Castellano. Have a great day, everybody.